Ladies and gentlemen, this is it. This is the final episode of 372 pages we'll never get back. I'm Mike Nelson.
Hey, what's up? Connor here. Except for the live show that we're doing. That's coming up.
Yeah, well, not everyone who listens to the podcast can, I think, fit into that small theater. So some people will not, this will be their final episode.
Right. Well, we're recording that, aren't we?
Oh, God. Yes. Okay, fine. Yes. Right. We're doing a live show on April 11th at Sisyphus Brewing in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I can promise you, if you do come, if you've been afraid of coming to Minnesota, April is the best time. The snow is fresh and crisp, and the air has that bite in it that I think will make you happy.
The Twins outfielders are slogging through the ankle-deep drifts in the outfield as they try to track down a fly ball during opening day.
I was telling Connor, I was looking it up because we are going to see some baseball when he is in town. And in the year of 1964, it did not get over 50 degrees until late in April. So every day up until that point had been below 50 degrees. And that's baseball weather if I ever saw it.
Yeah, no kidding. That was genuine confusion there. I was like, we are doing this, right? Like, I feel like we've covered
were
this.
Genuinely?
Yeah.
I thought it was a bit.
So should we restart this? All right.
That was a good bit then. I like that.
Great bit. Yeah. The actual panic. That's what you want in your comedy.
I was just counting this as a slightly separate thing. Also, I probably lied in that we will do another
lots of confusion.
Yeah, my premise was so off the mark. We might do one where we allow our detractors to pile on us, which I think should be fun. So but that's kind of TBD because of the people involved. So
schedules, yes. All right. Well, come and see us in Minneapolis. It'll be really fun. We'll have a lot to talk about.
And now that we've said all that, this is the podcast where we talk about the works of Ernest Cline. We have gone through Ready Player One, of course, and we are in the middle of Armada. And I know you've read every single word. And this is it. We've read everything.
Yeah. This is the final 4 chapters and an epilogue. He really sort of wraps it up. We've had our issues with the book. But I think, we'll see whether he's able to pull this off, to wrap it up in a neat little package to make it all worth the journey that happens here. So, I mean.
And that's kind of what does happen. And yeah.
Yep.
So this has been a lot of fun. Connor.
Thanks for joining us, folks. Yeah, this has been really cool. Thanks for listening. Thanks for emailing. We really appreciate it.
Yep.
Roll the music.
It's been a great time. So long.
All right.
That's our second gag of the show. That's pretty good.
That was the one we planned. That's not our episode. But if we were following the pacing of the final chapters of Armada, that's how much pretty would have gone, folks. So,
it is abrupt. And then the chapters are tiny and rushed. I'm not complaining about tiny chapters at this point, but
no, it's stunning the way that this played out. I think just the way that he was sort of building that there's something happening, and then the things that he devotes a page or two, sometimes a sentence or two. The things that are accomplished in a sentence in the final pages of this book are amazing.
Oh, shocking. Just absolutely shocking.
Could not a joke be, if this happened, you could probably make that the book. And and they sort of get passed over with the wave of a hand. It's really incredible. It sort of made me. Obviously, this journey is not worth it for many sort of sense, other than that you're laughing at these books. But that sort of was a nice cherry on the sundae, I think, for this to be the way that he just sort of dashed this off and jetted off to party with Harry Knowles or something at the Austin Draft House.
Ooh, I wonder what those parties look like. I'd like to get a T-shirt of that. There's a note that I have later. There's a single sentence, and I just had circled and said, why isn't this the whole book? Everything before this should have just been a hastily done prologue, and then this, whatever he's talking about there, we'll get to it. It's just this is the book. I mean, this is stuff to dive into, and this is the interesting stuff.
Right. Well, before that though, before the real rushing started, I don't even know what to compare it to, because we've always used the presentation analogy of him sort of making it up as he goes and repeating himself. But this is more of like a dad making up a bedtime story and then just like figuring out the end, once his kid has fallen asleep, like, okay, well, the princess they married, like, good night.
Exactly.
Honey.
Yeah, it's just he's out the door. He got a call, something, his pager went off or something, and he had to go do heart surgery because it's just amazing.
Right.
It's suddenly it moves forward in a way that I actually was saying, oh, well, this obviously isn't the ending. This is like some weird fake. But then I'm looking at the pages left going, well, I don't know.
Right.
How is this going to be satisfying where he does a double twist? But no, it's just, these events that are absolutely momentous pass by in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, I've had this experience before, and I've been reading this one paperback, obviously. But sometimes if you read a book on a Kindle, for example, this one has, several, 25 pages of Ready Player One at the end. So if you're reading on a Kindle, it shows this progress bar, and sometimes you get to a book, I can't remember what would have happened, but it has footnotes at the end, or it has that at the end, and you think that you're like at 80%, and then the book ends. And so I really think that if you had been reading this, that experience could have possibly happened where like, this isn't the actual ending. Like clearly there's 20% left in this book, and then it turns to epilogue and you're like, holy shit.
Right. I was reading a tough book recently on the Kindle that I hadn't picked up in a while. And it was the book that opened up to me, and it was really hard and a little bit scholarly. And I looked at it and I was 4% of the way through, and I thought I had been slogging through this thing forever. And it turns out I was reading it out of the complete works of someone. Oh, wow. So it was very, very disorienting. I'm like, man, I'm an idiot.
Well, let's pick up where we left off. They've just destroyed the dodecahedron, disruptor, Black Betty, old Tom Joad thing. And so he's trying to retrieve his father, his ship has sunk below. They're both below the surface of the Antarctic Sea right now. And it starts off, he's able to track his father down because for not the first time and certainly not the last time, Lex has employed a hack into his communication system that allows him to track down his father. This particular one works by touching the screen several times. Things like the Contra code from Nintendo, which is not necessarily how hacks work. But I thought we're going to get a lot of hacks. So it's essentially anytime something is going to need to happen, Lex is going to be able to hack it within the matter of, it takes a sentence that says Lex hacked it. Lex employed some computer wizardry. And I just thought it was, for apropos of nothing, the word hack shows up 5 times in these final chapters.
Yeah, I felt like less a hack and more like she paid the $2.99 for the pro version, and that unlocked the ability to find someone else. I don't understand why that was locked out of me.
Right. Yes, exactly.
I have one right away because this just stuck. I think it's the first sentence or very close to the top of the chapter 22. He says, once I'd stopped screaming, I maneuvered my inceptor around his pod and activated its retrieval arm. My first thought was, once you noticed yourself stopping screaming.
Of course, yes.
But I also wondered how he goes to great pains to tell us I screamed for what seemed like a minute. Or, he in other places he gives me the period of time, and we often laugh about. Imagine that, sitting there and giggling for a full minute or whatever,
listening to them talk about their show Stoned for several minutes.
He leaves us hanging here, and I just wondered how long that scream lasted.
Yeah, I mean, was it like Pee Wee Herman? Like it actually is going on because it's a surprising image that caught him. It's not like, so that struck me as very funny.
I wish he'd have added, I screamed like Cameron in Ferris Bueller's Day Off when he discovered the mileage on his dad's car.
He's taking breaths to the cartoon character, like looking at his watch. Yeah, so he retrieves his father, and I guess they had flown from the moon, so these things can haul at a pretty good clip, but he decides not to take him to the southernmost point of Chile to drop him off. He's going to drive him all the way back to Portland, and I guess that's something that these machines can do. Who cares?
Yeah.
But he flies back to Beaverton, and the thing that struck me was that he says that the whole city looked like a scene out of Deep Impact or World War Z. Those 2 movies that I can't go a day without hearing someone compare something in our daily life to. But it did make me happy that the World War Z was not something I'd thought about for many years, and so that sort of zombie boom, that guy has probably gone the way of maybe the way that this guy will be in 3 or 4 years from now, where that's not something we have to think or hear about unless we're reading another bad book.
That's right. Right after that sentence is this one. Every street, road, and highway leading out of Portland was clogged with all manner of vehicles, none of them moving. And it made me sad for the cars carrying goods and services to and from the city had stopped moving. I can't imagine how they were getting their goods and services anymore.
So I guess he's tuning into something on his comm system as he's doing this, where the anchors are, I guess they're doing propaganda. It was sort of unclear. There was propaganda last time, was they're saying that nobody's looting anything, but they seem to be spinning it as, even though everything's destroyed, they're saying, well, we fought them off and that was good. And I enjoyed the beautiful female anchor says, we managed to fight them all off. It's incredible. And then she nods enthusiastically. So I watched the clip of Walter Cronkite removing his glasses when he's announcing that John F. Kennedy had died. And it's like, well, you might think that would trigger a more similar reaction to that, considering that like World War II was just condensed down into 2 hours. But I guess the beautiful anchor is just sort of nodding the way she would if Kim Kardashian was at it again.
Yeah, there's still like there's the voices of children crying out in the smoking rubble of the city, like absolutely destroyed. It's a husk. It's still burning and smoldering.
Right.
This is the point where I said this can't be the real thing when these things are happening. Like, okay, then he does that screaming awake thing, and then we,
yes,
no, this is real. This plays out till the end, folks.
Right. We've all lived through awful things that have happened. We've seen how that makes the entire population stricken for a week, certainly in the hours immediately after it happened, as there's like this shock as you process it before you actually get to the grief. But like, as we're about to see, that isn't really how the high school kids here are handling this type of thing.
No, but I have notes on that. But before we do, I just want to add this. He noted that the Big Apple looked just like it did in every apocalyptic disaster movie I'd ever seen. Wait, what? You've already run out of movies to name check for apocalyptic disasters after Deep Impact in World War Z? You have nothing after that? That was shocking. Like, surely I can, off the top of my head, I can go to 15, without even thinking.
That became a cliche in the past 7 years, as every single, superhero and Transformer movie destroyed, New York or Chicago yet again. Mm-hmm. That was sort of like if you went on Family Feud and they asked him to name a post-apocalyptic disaster movie, and he leads off a Deep Impact, and Steve Harvey takes to the camera as it gets an X. But he goes and this was something that I could have been the dumb sentence, but he is trying to talk to his dad, and he's like, "I'm sorry, you were right. Please, General Xavier." When he didn't answer, I tried again, "Dad," but he still didn't respond. He was dead to the world, but alive. Yes. It's been established that he's alive, and he's trying to save him. It's a poor word choice there. He goes to his school. And I thought this was also interesting. Maybe he was distraught by the 30 million dead and the screams of children and animals in the street, but he opts to not park on the street for some reason. And so he strafes the school and fires his lasers at the school gym roof, which, the first time I probably was aware of it was like when Hurricane Katrina victims were moved to the Superdome. But it is the standard go-to place for victims of a tragedy or power loss or something like that to go to, right? Yeah,
I believe many times it is an emergency shelter signified as such and labeled accordingly.
Schools and school gyms and churches would be the places you'd go to and sleep on a cot and so. And I was emailing with someone yesterday because they had also pointed this out, but it was like, if you want to hand wave it away, I used my thing's heat vision and there were no life forms inside, so I shot down the roof, but they didn't even bother to do that.
I think he was so excited to get to this. I thought it was so on the nose. The game playing nerd shoots up the school gym with his lasers. That's so on the nose.
So on the nose and relatively tasteless if you want to extrapolate from that. I mean, sure, that was Calvin's ultimate fantasy too, but
right.
I was very happy that the thing that we spotlighted in the first episode, that luckily his house was only a couple miles from school, pays off after that substantial hang time.
Yes, indeed.
He's driving his dad.
He's crazy like
there.
a fox. He knew what he was doing. And speaking of fox,
oh yeah, this is good.
Mom
is good.
leaps out of her car, running to mine, covering her mouth with her long fingers.
Yep.
What is going on with that one?
That was very interesting. She's maybe secretly the Babadook.
That's
like,
what I thought.
Not necessarily a trait that most people associate with insanely hotness.
In the film, she'll be played by that guy who's in all those Guillermo del Toro films.
Doug Jones.
Doug Jones.
Yeah, I liked the drama of him arriving before she popped out with her long fingers. As I turned down our street and saw her empty driveway, I clenched my teeth in disappointment. My mom wasn't here. Literally the next sentence. I was still helping my father out of the car when I heard an engine behind me and turned to see my mom's car pulling in.
Yep.
I don't even know what he's doing anymore. Like,
yeah, that struck me too. I forgot about that.
So yeah, she jumps out and they embrace. Oh, this is amazing, and this is something that I'll just tell you. So as I watched them embrace there on the front lawn, my heart was rocked by waves of unbridled joy. It occurred to me that up until this moment, I'd only experienced the bridled kind. So that's a little joke.
Is that really? I missed that.
A little wordplay.
Are you serious?
He goes on. He expands upon it. But so when I went to copy that over, that is not in the draft.
Oh,
like he added that little joke thing in.
Wow.
In the draft, he said, as I watched them embrace there on the front lawn, my heart swelled until I thought it might burst, like a dam or like a nuclear detonation. He's used that thing before. But
well,
so that was
I think when his dad was in peril or almost dying, his heart did something. It like nearly burst out of his chest with grief.
Alien chest bursted, or
yeah.
So I will point these out because these are just the things that I was going to copy to make fun of here. But this, as we speculated, this was rather rushed, it seemed like, because this broke the all-time record for stuff that I went to copy, and it was not in that ebook review copy. There was a ton of stuff that was either left out of there or added in for this final version. So
wait, to be clear, was this added into the book?
So this
is in the one that I read in the actual copy?
Yes, in the paper book, it says, it occurred to me, I've only experienced the bridled kind.
Oh, wow, and I missed it. That's bad.
Yeah.
Bad form on my part.
But so, yeah, there's a lot of that. And I don't know what that means. Like, there's no explanation, and we're not going to get one. But this copy that's floating around for, I guess, reviewers was not the final thing, and they added in or took out a whole lot of stuff in this final section.
Weird.
What do you think happened?
I must have been, hastily get it to press. You have a hit book out. But no, the timeline doesn't make sense, right? This wasn't followed directly on the heels of.
I think it was. Like, I read something because the movie rights sold for, over $1 million, but it said the movie rights sold based on like a 20-page treatment. So I don't think the book was finished by the time that he did that. I think they were just like RP ones at the top of the bestseller list. Like, we got to strike while this stone has some water left in it.
Yeah, well, then I guess the editor was just, need something here, and it seems rushed, but add this, and let's go. Yeah. That has to be
incredible. So another one comes up right away. And this was, because this is a great line that we've spotlighted before, but the dog runs out, like the 18-year-old dog runs out. And I was like, oh my, is this dog going to come out here and die? Like, is he going to be that bold? Which didn't happen, Odysseus style. But my father began to laugh under the beagle's barrage of kisses, but then he glanced over at my mother and me, and his features suddenly contorted into a mask of pain. But that didn't happen in the draft either. He just says he glanced over at my mother and me and suddenly broke down and began to sob. So he added in another contorted into a mask of pain.
Oh, his father's face at this point is going bananas. I noted a bunch of them. I stopped noting them. It's just like, this guy is, who is this man?
Yeah,
I think physically he's going to look like the like one of those old guys that pulls their bottom lip over their chin or whatever, like their teeth are gone. Yes. Or he looks like the clown prince of baseball, that guy who would do the goofy faces and pitch, do trick pitches and stuff.
Or like at the beginning of Mario 64, where you could pull Mario's nose with the cursor and just like tweak that with the.
He's got one of them Apple filters on his face that he can just move it all over.
And so he sees his family embracing and they're reunited. And he says, "Suddenly, I wanted very much for the world not to end. I wanted it to keep going more than anything. And so I'm glad we got his okay on the matter to keep existing." Because it's important.
He signs off on that. I'm glad.
So he's going to take off to go see Cruz and deal. But his mom is diagnosing his dad. She says he's definitely suffered a concussion, but he'll live. And so as he's leaving, though, they put him through the standard. Since he's a nurse, she knows the standard concussion protocol. She buries him face down in the couch cushions and let his dog sits on his head. So that's a good way to treat it.
I believe that is standard. And he becomes quite a comic character at this point because he's drugged up. But it's never really clear how is it affecting him? Which is concussion, the gash on his head, which is him just being sort of a dumbass. There's kind of that is mixed in there. He doesn't seem like the hardened general we've come to know, that's for sure. But it's sometimes blamed on the drugs, and other times it's just he's just so goofy. He's got that goofy grin.
He's like a Shia LaBeouf character or something from when he's freaking out in Transformers, like flopping into the couch, and so is Deal when we go to meet him. But I did note that when he was observing when he was in the pod and watching the pod like shoot up his dad, he said something like, "I hoped that they had checked the expiration date on that medicine," which also struck me as a very weird thing to think about as he was, watching the space age technology, treating his father with a robot, being like, I don't know when I learned about drug expiration dates, but it certainly wasn't when I was 18 years old.
Hey, it had thimerosal in it, so he was fine, unless you're Jenny McCarthy. Then he's in big trouble. So.
So he drives over to Deal's house, who fortunately also lives a few miles from school. It would have been weird if he was one of those guys that lives like 100 miles from his school. But he goes to climb in Deal's window or something, and Deal starts falling out of his chair, also like Shia LaBeouf or Jim Carrey.
Yeah, he's the gatekeeper, the bridge keeper in It's a Wonderful Life, like doing the wide-eyed what and then falling off the chair.
Deal he's only 18, but he still looks at his bottle of whiskey. But yeah, their introduction was good. Again, I thought, just in terms of things that are one sentence apart. "Zack," he said, leaning out the window to give me a hug before pulling me inside. "Jesus, man." We hugged each other. Then I turned to wave at Cruz. "You just hugged each other. You hugged each other outside the window, and then you hug each other inside the window." It's very puzzling.
It's Cruz and Deal, man. It's the Mikes.
Yeah. So
who doesn't love these guys? They have been a fixture in this book.
Right. He does. At some point in time, he refers to them as the Mikes again. But that was another thing with hang time on it from the beginning that didn't matter, didn't need to pay off. There was never a comic scene where he was like, "Mike, not you." Like it was talking.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so he makes the curious, authorial standpoint. He's the author; he can do whatever he wants. But he puts Cruz on a chat window the entire time, which is a very, just from the point of view of drama, that's the thing that Spielberg would get us and be like, "What? Like, put them in the same room?
They're together, yeah, to watch how this tragedy is playing out."
But yeah, speaking of the tragedy, he compliments his sweet EDA uniform.
Mm-hmm.
So that might have been worth, a couple of the millions of dead.
He had to raise his voice over the screams of someone, a couple houses over going, "Please help me."
Right. The every tragedy we've seen play out, they're still rescuing survivors from, Katrina, like weeks later, who are, starved and dehydrated, but these heroes are still going around to pull them out of their attics and stuff. But Deal is saying, "Thanks for leaving without me, Biggs."
There's a bunch of lines. So he he impresses them because he gives them the rundown of everything that he did And he actually says, I didn't realize this. He said less than 24 hours ago is when he left.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So that's the timeline.
It's all in a day.
And he's wearing the uniform, and he, saved the Earth, and he's got the QCOM, and he whips that out, and he calls in. And that's when they learn of the death toll of, it's 30 million and growing, I'm sure.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I mean, the city of Portland is leveled on, there's not a single survivor.
Right. How do you even estimate that? Like at this point in time, like there's no way they could have.
I don't know how they're getting reports, but at that point, Deal says he's got a couple of lines. He makes the attempt to call some, I forget what the exact thing is, but says, well, that was a giant ball of fail.
Yeah.
And then about his parents, I want to know if they boned in zero gravity. Again, the bodies are still, right. Smoking and burnt. There's charred children in the streets, and that's Deal. And then he goes into his Brady Bunch shtick of note, of fame, because it was
that was sort of something I'd forgot about, but that seeing as how that was integrated, how that paid off was a real treat. I still don't know how these people are aware of the Brady Bunch, but sure, that's the association they have with seeing a group chat window on their screen, is that it reminds them of the Brady Bunch.
Mm-hmm.
So they had managed to hack their rigs, I guess, or their androids, their aphids, in order to have them surround their house, because people had been all over the world have been figuring all sorts of hacks to make them do stuff the EDA never intended. Then they post how-to videos on YouTube showing everyone else how to do it too.
That happened within that 24-hour period again.
Oh, I mean, the invasion stopped an hour ago, 2 hours ago, right? I mean, he flew from Antarctica. After that, he destroyed the Black Betty, mm-hmm. the old Dan Tucker, and then that's when the drone stopped. So that's when everyone had the freedom to do all this stuff. So guys, again, were not rolling up their sleeves and digging out survivors. They were like breaking down their things and posting the videos to YouTube, hacking it so they can play Doom on it and stuff.
Hey, you got to love that, we just shrug it off and keep moving on.
Those two jokers had disabled the recall subroutine on their aphids, so they didn't leave for reassignment after the first wave. Now they'll be here to protect my mom and little sisters when the second wave arrives. So I was like, speculating like, yeah, they were guarding a hospital, but, finders keepers here. Now they're in my front lawn, like my dog's barking at them.
Right. But then he makes the call in. He's trying to convince the Grand Council, the Star Chamber, the Poobahs, the whatever, to mm-hmm. of his dad's insane conspiracy theory. And so that's a hack as well, right? He's able to hack into the council.
Oh yeah, brother, yeah, like yes, calling up Stephen Hawking and what's his name is made possible by like Lex had gotten hacked from the contacts. She had maybe the general had their contact information, so she was able to transfer it to him. I mean, anything that he's able to do is explained away by a hack. It's very much the Wizards did it from The Simpsons, mm-hmm. explaining how itchy and scratchy cartoons work. But yeah, that's how he's able to get in touch with them. But I think before that though, they do have some few more good lines. He's talking about when he's talking about how he hacked the thing. He says, the super hot mech driver I met at Crystal Palace showed me how to do it. She also kissed me, FYI. Deal says, I want to know if they boned in zero gravity. Spill it, Lightman. Mm-hmm. And Deal also is able to do something in these scenes, so that these, if you're reading the book, they're broken up the way any book is broken up, where a section ends and then there's sort of either a gap or like 3 asterisks to sort of divide up a dramatic scene. And the way that those usually end is on a joke or on a line of note, the way you would cut to a break on a TV show commercial. But in the span of the last couple chapters, Deal has ones that are just like they just sort of lay there and then they stare at each other for 3 seconds and then they cut the scene, like you would an unsuccessful like stand-up joke where the host just comes out, all right, everybody, that was but
Right.
so, or like an improv scene where you say something and someone decides to sweep and end it without having gotten a laugh. But the first one that caught my attention was I raised my wrist and activated my QCOM. Both of my friends' eyes lit up. What the holy sweet hell is that? Deal asked. A tricorder? End scene.
And hold for laugh.
Yes. And then so yeah, that was a dramatic moment. Later on, when the aliens are landing at the Devil's Tower in Wyoming, Deal says, "Oh, that's not cool." He stared at a live video image of the disruptor taken by an orbiting satellite. Are these alien pricks openly mocking us now? Christ! And scene. Deal is hammering these ones home. So I think that just again speaks to the swiftness that this last passage was sort of done with.
I assume, though, when you did hear news of the Devil's Tower and the reference to Close Encounters, in your head you heard la, do, da, ba, ba, of course.
That almost got me. I was taking a sip of coffee. That was I saw where you were going and I didn't spit take. So yeah, that's the end of that chapter. It stops right before he's calling the scientists.
Gives there's a curious line here about, because
Okay.
so it's, I don't recognize the names of the non, pop famous ones.
Yes. No.
I only recognize the two pop famous ones, which
Right.
are Neil deGrasse Tyson and what's his name?
Stephen Hawking.
Stephen Hawking, sorry. And Stephen Hawking spoke using his famous computer-generated voice, which now, ironically, reminded me of Chen's translator instead of the other way around. It's just a weird... But you said they sounded exactly the same. So why
Right,
is
so-
one reminding you of the other? They are the same. It's the same
Right.
thing.
Right. So when he met Chen, he said, "This reminds me of Stephen Hawking's thing." We knew he was foreshadowing there. But now, after the 4 hours he spent with Chen, that's his go-to reference for it.
Yeah, he completely reversed himself. And I did note when he rang up Tyson, he said he didn't know where he was. They were each at a different location, etc. And I just assumed that Tyson was at his location in Rationalia, the country he proposed with a one-line constitution. Do you remember that?
No, is that real?
That's a tweet that he did, yes. I propose a new country called Rationalia with a one-line constitution. Everything we do should be based on the weight of evidence, is one of his tweets.
Wow.
Or did he catch him in the middle of crapping on New Year's Eve as being a meaningless thing? Have you ever seen those? Every holiday he unleashes his, you should not be happy about this because, and then some stupid, science bullshit.
Right. Oh, wow. So how would Rationalia, handle free speech?
The weight of evidence, man. It's easy. One line.
Sure, but
it's the dumbest thing in the world.
My evidence is I don't like what my neighbor's saying. Makes me unhappy.
Yep. I'm going to kill him.
Yes.
There's one more line, and then we can move on out of this chapter. He said, I forget what his snarky reply was to them but they asked to put him on hold after he, rushes out the whole thing. Like, I know you guys, I know there's people are dying, there's cities are smoldering, but here's my conspiracy theory about what's happening. And then he makes some snarky reply and he says, I don't think they even heard my snarky reply because they put me on hold before I'd finished making it. So you don't think they heard you. But if you had to guess, since you just said they put you on hold before you made the quip, what would your guess be? I don't think so.
Right. Pounded the keyboard, the margarita in one hand as as Harry Knowles is firing up the Xbox in the other room.
Yes. Well, now the chapters start coming fast and furious. I actually have very few notes for the next few because they're so short, but also not much going on in each one.
Yeah, no. Yeah, chapter 23. And I spent a lot of time in that one just because it did have a lot more going, but the next one's happened really quick. But before we do that, I just wanted to say that so we did it last time with when we finished this Ready Player One series. We decided we didn't want these books in our house anymore, but we thought that there might be something we could do good with them. So we auctioned them off on eBay and donated all the money to a 826 National, which does creative writing workshops and programs in underserved communities, and people were really into that. It raised like almost $500 for a very good cause. So we want to do that again. We will put up the links on all our pages and in this description. But folks,
bonus.
This is really incredible. Lucas Antoniak from riseofthemolecule.com. Lucas has made our T-shirts and did the event page for our live podcast. He's very talented. You may have seen the cow, Hell of a Rig inflatable cow T-shirt, and a dozen of you have already bought it. I'm not sure if you saw it, but someone bought one and put it on their Tom Servo doll yesterday.
Beautiful.
They bought the infant size and put it on that, so that was cool.
That explains the request for the infant size.
Yes, fortunately, we haven't seen an actual baby in one. But anyway, so Lucas did an actual, I think probably watercolor painting of the inflatable cow who fans have deemed Chuckette. So it is a really awesome piece of artwork. I mean, I'll just say it out loud that I'm still in my mind debating keeping it for myself because it's a really, really nice thing. But we're going to include that in the auction too, so you can bid on the books that me and Mike have taken notes in. We'll sign them, and then you get this one of a kind original creation that it will look good anywhere in your home. You can put it in your office if you don't want to work for much longer. So look for that on eBay. Dig deep because it's all for a good cause and really cool prizes.
Well, I think you can hang it in your office. It's just the problem is if anyone asks what it is. I think on its face, it's just a charming little, slight bit of oddity, a curio, but hand painted and as you say, one of a kind. But yeah, go ahead and risk that until the regional manager comes in. What? I like that piece of art. Please explain what that is. So just have a story made up, so you don't have to explain what it is.
It's a Far Side cartoon, right? He liked cows. But yeah, the body inflation forum was talking about us just because it came full circle that we've been talking about something we found on their forum, and so I posted that, and someone was like, "Hey, they're doing what they do. They're consenting. They're having fun with it. Like, more power to them." And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Let them, we don't have any gripe with the body inflation community. Lord knows I wouldn't want to. There's just something about that cow that I found funny. So
yeah, I don't want to start any trouble with those people. I don't know what they can marshal in their favor.
Yeah, they blow to pop, Mike. That is something that they. I don't look that up, folks.
Yeah, please don't.
So yeah, check out our eBay auction. It will be it'll be a lot of fun to see how that one works out this time around. Maybe it will go for $100, in which case I'll bid and keep it myself.
You love that thing.
So yeah, we move on through the story, and this one starts with a bang. And I say that and realized it was a pun as soon as I said it. But he hangs up with these. Oh no, he's not hanging up. He's dialing in his father, dialing in his dad. And he sort of sees this suspicious glow on his father's face, and then realizes, no wonder my parents hadn't answered their phones earlier. They'd been too busy boning each other like teenagers.
Yeah, that made it into fan fiction earlier. And once again, always fun to see, how is this possibly going to play out? This can't be real. And there it is. But the reason that he knows they had been boning like teenagers was he was smiling, an unbridled, rapturous smile, even bigger than the one he's been wearing when we first met. Once again, what is going on with this man's face? Yeah,
that's, it's almost Cheshire at this point in time.
And then I believe this is the dad. Nixon had NASA. So he patches in his dad with the council, right?
Well, but before that, he says that if he had still been his old Bruce Banner self, I would have hulked right the fuck out on him then and there. Yeah. And I was like, through the video conferencing, you would have just sort of done a wrestling promo being like, when I see you next time, Ulysses Lightman, I'm going to blah, blah, blah.
Take a walk around my back, Jack.
Yeah. Starts pulling out little creamers and it's like, so yeah, I don't know what hulking out involves through FaceTime, but and I did just realize the dog thing was a joke, right? Ulysses, Odysseus. Yeah, I guess that's Odysseus, right? Are they the same thing?
But I don't know. I didn't pick up on that at all.
The dog doesn't Odysseus's dog come out and die?
I don't know. That's
whatever.
I was too busy watching back-to-back Banana Splits episodes. I don't know. So he says, Nixon had NASA send a nuke as our first olive branch, Dr. Strangelove. So at heart, everyone is Deal, just cracking terrible jokes and making their references without any acknowledgement. His dad isn't, did you get a report? How many dead? What happened? No, just cracks a Dr. Strangelove, burn right away. That's his first thing after, collapsing his giant goofy smile.
But who is he calling Dr. Strangelove?
Oh, he's patched into the board
just with all those other five guys.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I'm sorry. My note didn't say who he's talking to when he says that.
Well, probably Tyson or Hawking. And I don't remember how it all works. I'm going to assume that that's an inaccurate use of that term as a slur. Yes. They're hashing it out with his dad on this exchange. But then they get a surprise visitor. I blinked in surprise because Corporal Vance shows up or whatever, Admiral Vance. Apparently Vance knew a few QCOM tricks of his own. And I assumed that he had watched a YouTube tutorial for hacking them within the past hour or so after he skipped the debriefing thing to go and watch a YouTube channel of how to hack into the five scientists.
Right. Oh, that's who he was. He was talking to Vance because it was
Vance.
Okay. It's Vance's it's all part of his plan. So that's who Dr. Strangelove is there.
But I like this part. Vance's haggard face grew to fill half my display, scowling at us in crystal clear high definition. And so I was like, what? It's 2018. Are you my dad in 2004 when he got the first HD TV we'd ever seen? It was like, you got to come down to the basement. Like they're showing footage of the Grand Canyon in crystal clear HD. Like it's amazing. Who has referred to that at all in the past decade?
Yeah, I've often been curious about the QCOM and its actual workings because he often talks about looking at someone on the display, and he said, my eyes scanned down to my father's wound, or they did this. How big is the screen? What are the dimensions? Your eyes are scanning all over? I assume it's 2.5, 3 inches diagonally, something like that. It's on his wrist, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. It's. I thought it was. Yeah. Exactly. Like a.
So how crystal clear does it need to be? It's just. It's
yeah.
tiny.
I was imagining smaller than a smartphone, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, but I guess maybe it's like a 16K display or something like that. Who knows? It doesn't matter at this point in time. We like everything. We just put in more thought than he did.
Yes.
They say Vance says like we're not stopping this. Like your plans are useless. And but then yet again, this is like it's like a bad comedy routine. He drops off, and then the other people have all been eavesdropping, like in a Shakespeare play or something. The rest of his team, Wody and Debbie and Lex, are all there. And then he asked Lex to set up things so they could all listen on the conference call. She also installed software on her QCOMs to prevent the EDA from remotely disabling them. So just hand wave, all that's possible.
Oh, everything is from here on out is completely ad hoc. It's added at the time. Oh, I should have probably had them listening. Oh, okay, they were listening.
So that was that sort of chapter. I don't know if there's anything else about those scientists or anything like that. I didn't take anything really away from that other than he just wanted to put those guys in the book, probably so Neil deGrasse would tweet about it.
One more smile from the old man, though. He broke into a broad smile, but he doesn't tell us how big it was compared to the one when they first met or the one when he called him. But again, he's his face contorting one more time.
So they move on to chapter 24, where they go to their old video game store. That's when his dad issues the command, once again, that was in the fan fiction. I need each of you to build the best rig you can as fast as you can. And then there was another thing that I thought was fun to have, the hang time on the payoff. There's a secret access node for the EDA's hardline fiber optic intranet hidden somewhere at this location, he said, but I can't find it. I remembered something Ray had told me during our shuttle ride to Crystal Palace, that glaive fighter I'd seen outside my classroom window. He'd said it was a scout ship conducting surveillance on the EDA's hardline intranet. Oh,
I didn't even notice that. That is an Easter egg. That's
so we made fun of that in the beginning. Where was the? I wrote down how many times hardline, and node come out. Okay, yeah. So internet in these last 3 chapters, keeping in mind what we know about what's about to happen, the climax of the book, internet turns up 11 times and hardline turns up 8 times. So your pulse is pounding.
Oh, I can't. Yeah, the descriptions of how they set those up. And at that moment when he says there's a secret hardline here, I just wrote, and now this, people will, before you start shrieking at me, this is resolved later, but this is clumsy right now. We need to find the hardline, which I thought, I guess it's worth a try, but that line might have been ruptured during an attack which reduced the entire city to charred rubble. I don't know, what is the infrastructure of the hard lines you buried? As the EDA did this, what did they say they were doing?
Right.
Like, how deep are they burying these lines, and why are they certain that they'll be working?
Right. That's a good point.
I mean, you think about any public works in your city, it involves, they have to do the environmental studies for 6 years before they even turn the backhoe on. How are you putting in a line that is completely impenetrable fiber optic line through the city?
Right.
Does people take note of that when there's a mile deep trench in the middle of Portland?
Right.
But anyway, it gets waved away later. I think
they do. How did they wave it away? Do you remember?
There's a really boring paragraph about how they were, when they set it up, they realized that the, Black Betty would take out communications and they'd need hard lines. So they put each node was hardwired above. So they ran lines to, their readouts in, what's the one, Red Dragon or Dragon?
Yeah, Red Rock Center or something.
Red Rock, yeah. So that there's a hard line 2 there, I guess.
They're massive hard line. Yeah.
So they're all connected
across the country.
Yeah. So
so why didn't every drone work through that system?
Well, they have to have a tether on them.
Oh,
he talks about like carbon fiber tethers. Which is.
I mean, my parents went without power for like 3 days last month because of like a mild windstorm during February in DC. So I'm glad that the other one can withstand the disruptors and nuke blasts and all that stuff. It's good that.
Yeah, but they also had to have those signs, please call the EDA before digging, those.
Yeah, miss utility.
Yeah.
That would be awesome if just a kid was digging for buried treasure in his backyard and ruptured the EDA's thing, and that was what had ended up dooming humanity.
Some guy putting in a jungle gym.
Yeah, so he sort of does the thing that he did throughout the book. But if the Europans knew about the EDA's backup intranet, why hadn't they bothered to destroy or disable it before they invaded? Because their actions have never made any sort of tactical sense, I thought. And he sort of uses that as, therefore, I understand what they're doing, thing that he's about to determine their path here. But it's just that sort of he spotlights this twist that's coming for the entire time, somehow managing to understand what they're doing, despite the whole twist being that he doesn't think that their actions make any sense.
Yeah, it's too tough to untangle.
Yeah, but there's more hacking. They've prevented Vance from being able to monitor them because Lex has installed something in their thing. But then that's the concern of Ray when they call him up to find out where the safe is. So they call up Ray and he says, "You're back at the store," he said, brightening first, then scowling at the side of his office. "What the hell, man? Who are you letting ransack the place? Looters?" I'm glad that his priorities are in the right place. Again, as the
city's still smoldering.
Right. You could watch the death count roll up by the hundreds, like probably in the time that they had that sentence. But he's upset that his rigs are getting unboxed at the video game store. Then this was something that I was at Lauren his coworkers had a party last weekend, and people were asking, what I was up to, and I was telling him about this book. And this was the sentence that I remembered and was able to spotlight for them. "The honor is all mine, Sergeant," he said. "I owe you a huge debt for watching over my boy while I was gone. Thank you." "You're welcome," Ray said, blushing visibly.
Yep. I have that highlighted as well.
And just so, I mean, what other way is there to blush? It's like it's a physical action, like visibly embarrassed, I guess. That's what he was going for. But if you're blushing, it probably is going to be visible since.
Well, I think what he was trying to do was once again highlight the crisp resolution of that QCOM device. I could see a blush on a 2.5-inch screen on my wrist phone, is what he's saying.
Oh my God.
So he happily throws in, right, his old boss, father figure, Ray, who's a high commander now. And they come up with their plan, which this goes pretty quick, I think. But he says this: I wasn't a fan of several aspects of his plan. And I just thought, I circled, I was like, I'm glad to hear there's something sci-fi-esque that he wasn't a fan of. I wouldn't have thought it possible. So he's not a fan of something, at least.
Right, yeah. He's like, well, I wasn't a fan of the part of the plan where he rated Star Trek 5 over Star Trek 6, because that's obviously ludicrous. Yeah. But, I mean, that wasn't really part of his plan, but it just came up in the natural course of conversation. But I didn't think it was the time to argue about that type of thing. But,
right.
But yeah, so they are moving on from this, from the store after they get into the safe, which has a password that I assume would violate most generic office password protocols, certainly one of national security, which is just a Rush album and then THX is 1138. No special characters, no caps, nothing like that. But that's what they've got protecting the
and I thought
the hard line.
It was curious that he just mashes two references together, and it would be like putting national security under what's the pop song from the 80s, 8675309. Like nobody, And then everyone who used to drink beer in their dorm rooms gives him a thumbs up. Like, yeah, sweet.
Right. The guy with that number is like, please, let it die. Like, it's not funny anymore. But yeah, so we move on to chapter 25. And once you've read the book, once you've seen how it ends, it's just hilarious that at this point in time, there are 20 pages left. Knowing what's about to come, knowing what events that shake our understanding of the world and the entire future of humanity is going to be taken in just 20 pages, not even 20 pages. This is how the chapter starts. The second wave attacked just minutes after my father departed. A swarm of glaive and wyvern fighters descended from the sky to attack Portland and the surrounding suburbs. Our drone reserves were heavily diminished, and consequently we were far more outnumbered than we had been during the first wave. But the EDA's civilian gamer forces continued to put up a valiant fight, and a fierce battle raged in the streets of the city and in the sky above while we carried out our mission inside the store. But enough of that, Mike. Let's talk nodes.
We get back to some node speak there?
Very quickly goes into the nodes. During his chalk talk, my father had explained how the EDA's hardline intranet worked. It was an underground fiber optic cable network directly linking all of its drone controller outposts together, creating a disruptor-proof communication system that the Alliance had prepared in anticipation of this invasion.
Yeah, well, there it is. That's the explanation that I was looking for before, but that answers nothing. Every node where the drones are has these hardwired cables? So there were 2,400 miles of lines running from the ones there to the, in the store at the mall store. So did they have to rip through the Cold Stone Creamery? And
the Thai fighter, Thai restaurant had to shut down for 2 months as they did this.
I mean, it's bizarre that he could just get away with this. You just come up with something else. That they had a new technology invented by Neil deGrasse Tyson that it's a laser that shoots into a mirror at an outpost above the Jupiter, and then it shoots back, But to say that, it's just so stupid.
Right. Yeah, you've imposed the restriction that there is this weird disruptor that had the weird loophole of like, if they're on a different moon, then they still work. But if they're on the same planet, like you created that, limitation. You can certainly create something just as dumb to circumvent that.
Yeah, I have to admit, I have a note here. I don't have many notes for chapter 25. I assume it's super small. I'm not looking at the book. I'm just looking at notes. But I just thought, man, you get to the end, and the action that he describes it's almost technically unreadable. It is unreadable for me. I just couldn't. It's so dull and hard to follow that it's just so skippable. And this is the linchpin of the whole book.
Right.
It just gets so dreary in a way, trying to picture what he has in his head, which he's unable to translate to the page in any way that makes it something that I can't wait to read the next sentence. What happens? Instead, you're reconstructing minutia in your brain going, wait, what? He's going over here, and this is So anyway, I didn't.
Yeah.
I sort of failed at this chapter.
Okay. Well, I've got some specifics, and I've got a very good point about that, what you just said, coming up, because there was a thing that I just had no idea what we were supposed to be picturing in our head. But before that, I want to talk about Wodey's Uncle Franklin, because this is a guy that we just got tossed in right here, but I kind of wish the whole book had been about him, because Wodey was fighting from an Armada sit-down arcade game located in the game room of her Uncle Franklin's bowling alley in New Orleans. And so I'm picturing like I don't know, Uncle Franklin. I in my head was I think Clark Peters, the guy from The Wire, and Treme, and I mean just this. He played Lester Freeman on The Wire. He's just a badass, sort of older dude. So I'm
Right.
imagining him being Uncle Franklin running in a bowling alley, just being like, "What the hell is my niece doing?" Like, I don't know, whatever. I got to polish some bowling balls. Like,
What was? Did you say New Orleans?
yes.
Was that not burning to the ground? Did they spare it?
I don't know. They'd suffered enough, maybe. Like in New Orleans, it was where it was. I'm not
right.
sure.
Well, I guess
major port. You'd think that if aliens were doing any shipping or anything, they'd probably want to conquer that, or at least diminish our ability to do it.
Yeah.
But then this was another thing that just struck me as sort of sloppy. Cruz and Deal had detached the small Xbox-like game controller from each aphid's back. So it was like, well, the controller was like an Xbox. It's something that was a small detail, but
yeah, that was part of the thing that made my eyes glaze over. It's like, I'm not doing the work here. I refuse to figure out what he's talking about. Aphid comes up 1,200 times. I have zero picture of what that is in my head. I'm sure there's some description of it earlier, but
yeah, sort of. So I looked that up because he goes on to, that's how his father escaping. I mean, or how he's doing his little self-sacrifice move. He detached the tethered controllers from each drone and used them to command 4 aphids to lift his injured body off the ground. Then he had them interlace their 8 arms and legs around his body, forming something that looked sort of like a walking spider tank. This contraption, this contraption lifted him up and continued to carry him forward. So yeah, that's it looks sort of like a walking spider tank. Got it? No? Well, that's what I'm referring to.
That's all I got for you.
Continues on. So he calls it that as he moves on, and it's very sloppy because we don't know what an aphid looks like. Nobody knows what an aphid looks like, because if you try to look for like fan art or even something from the book or an illustration, there's nothing. There's absolutely
wait. So this is just his invention? This is not something he took from something else?
Maybe he said it looked like the thing that they use in Aliens, but who knows? I mean, that has to be what it is. But there's no. I just thought that was another damning aspect of this book, that no fans even gave a shit enough to do this. They didn't do any basilisks. We had a fan do a really awesome picture of a glaive fighter that has Professor Frink mented on it, and that's more fan art than any of Armada's actual fans ever came up with. But yeah, Spider Tank is
Spider Tank. Well, I think in the first Gulf War, we all remember as they were rolling in for the Saddam's Imperial Guard or whatever they were.
Schwarzkopf was on one, just flexing as he rolled in. He's in this. His dad has done this. He's gone into the Red Rock thing or whatever. He's infiltrated that, and he's concerned. He says that the icebreaker and its fighter escorts were under control of Vance and his underlings at Raven Rock. I took control of the lead interceptor, and through its moons, I could see the icebreaker closing in on the icy moon, or through his cameras. I knew that those ships were under the control of the best pilots the EDA had available. That would certainly include Viper, who's Vance, who he just referred to as Vance, and Rostam, who were both listed above me in the Armada pilot rankings for a very good reason. They were better than me. So I'm glad that he emphasized at this late stage how the concept of rankings work, to emphasize that the ones who are ranked better than him are in fact better than him. It's an important thing to drill down on at this point in time.
Also something that, this is just still, it seemed more like his video game grudge than any kind of drama reveal. It's more like he's still just ticked that he couldn't beat these guys in the actual video game.
Yes, exactly. He was bitter about that guy asking him to sign an autograph, and the guy had been polite to him, and was ranked like 1 or 2 spots above him. So it's not like he's wronged him in any way other than just being a better guy. Oh no, he was recruited because he didn't have anger issues because he didn't beat the crap out of some guy and leave him for dead.
Right.
So you can understand why he'd hold a grudge. So this I thought you would personally appreciate. Lex has executed more computer wizardry to put a feed of his father's mission on his heads-up display so that as he's flying the ship's drone, he's able to watch what his father is doing in this base through the network of security camera footage. And these also appear to be mic'd up as well. So in my mind, there's someone, as his father is going down this hallway and he's going to make a spider tank and he's going to sacrifice himself and confront these guys. Someone is like switching down the hallway through all the security cameras. So I thought it was like, when you tried to watch MLB TV playoffs like 6 years ago.
Right.
And like they wouldn't let you watch the actual game feed. They would be like, you can control the action yourself. So there'd be like a camera that pointed at second base and there'd be a camera that pointed, at the outfield. And you had to switch through them if you wanted to follow the ball. And it was unwatchable.
Right. That was the weirdest thing. They didn't license the actual footage of the game. They licensed the raw cameras and put them all up. It was unwatchable.
It was impossible. So that's how he's maintaining this. Like a camera's like pulling into second base to pull focus, like in between every like time the ball's put in play and stuff. But he's able to find, minute details like that his father is making a spider tank.
So his father does sacrifice himself, right? I mean, it happens in the course of a very short chapter.
Yeah, it does. But the way that he makes his presence known was by hijacking all the Aethid's external speakers and then used them to put a song I recognized immediately from his old Raid the Arcade mix, Run's House by Run DMC.
Yep.
Archie really hates hip-hop, we heard him say. I bet this will throw him off his balance.
Yep, that was fanfic before because I couldn't believe it.
A lot came from this section because this is really, really bad. So I just, interpreted that, his dad is, Archie is, the crusty dean in a college movie, or like the dad in the black or white video who's just going to be so thrown off by black people making music that he's going to be, and he isn't thrown off his game. He shoots out the speakers immediately, but it was a weird bone to toss in there.
Yes, this is how he's going to defeat him because he hates
hip hop. There's more stuff that was left out of the draft. When he enters the room to sacrifice himself, he says that Rostam looked completely starstruck in my father's presence, which, the guy is here to kill you, you have to imagine. So there's no reason to look starstruck in meeting a guy who's like 2 rankings ahead of you.
Yeah, and he's Rostam isn't he in a hell of a rig? He has to be, right? He's controlling the things that are guiding the icebreaker.
Yeah, he might actually be there, and then this is like a weird delay mission that his dad is doing in order to give his son time to get to wherever he's doing. It didn't make much sense for him to sacrifice himself. I don't know why he did it, because as soon as he sacrifices himself, they run out and hop into their drones. But I think Rostam's actually there in person right now, because he says, Corporal Vance turned his weapon on my father. I saw Rostam avert his gaze. So it's very good editing on the terms of whoever's controlling security cameras to like get a real good shot of Rostam averting his gaze. But that was another thing that was not in the draft of these Rostam reaction shots, maybe because they're really stupid and don't add anything to the action here.
How about just a quick sentence about Uncle Frank? Put on his Uncle Frank was a TV director. He did sports and he did bowling and stuff. So he was very familiar with how to cut to action. He threw on his headphones and went, camera 1, push in, and camera 2, hold. And
well, he would be reluctantly like spraying the shoes, like, and Wody would be like, "We really need you," and he's like, "No, I'm too old for that shit." And then like
one more mission.
Uncle Franklin, then at some point in time he taps her and he's wearing his headset to be able to do it. Like, move aside, Wody, I'm here to do this.
Yes.
See, all right. So the book would be immensely improved by Uncle Franklin's presence.
Yeah.
All right. So he sacrifices himself.
It's basically he pulls the pin on a grenade and I don't know. The action is so when he's throwing out those acronyms and things, I can't picture anything.
Yeah, and he tells Vance to get out of there, like this isn't about you, like this was just meant to distract you, so my son will be the one to fix this. And Sure. Okay. Like that's fine. We know what he's going for, the self-sacrifice that has happened in many of these types of movies. But
and then he dies and he says, and this is the only thing I hooked on, I screamed. I don't know for how long. Well, I just wanted to say, well, how many breaths did you take? Let's start there. Was it like 30 refreshes? And then, I don't know, how long can a person scream at one go? 3 to 6 seconds? They're pretty enervating. I don't know.
Was it longer than when you were under the Arctic Ocean and saw his body in the submerged capsule?
When I stopped screaming. So this is a new trait of his in these final chapters. It's just long screams where he's refreshing and, really going from the diaphragm and,
well, he moves to engage, and as he does that, the song "One Vision" by Queen queued up on my father's old Raid the Arcade playlist. And at this point in time, I was like, "Oh, queued up on the what now?" Oh, your father's old Raid the Arcade playlist. The only thing that you've ever listened to and that you've mentioned a dozen times as your go-to music for the thing. I just thought it was funny that he kept saying, sometimes he would say my Raid the Arcade playlist, and sometimes he would say my father's old Raid the Arcade playlist. But that's what's going to be what takes him through the thing. And, we never got a moment where he lost the playlist and lost his ability to focus as we predicted.
Yeah, he didn't. That never paid off. I have a question that is coming too late, and it might be a dumb question. Is the term "Raid the Arcade" just his? That was just the name of the mixtape, or is that something common that you would know in the gaming community or what have you?
Oh man, I think it just has to be the Clinian like war door, ear gear, rhyme time kind of stuff that he does.
I was just curious about that, like as if I was supposed to be excited to hear it, play a part in a story, or it's just him having made it up. So
yeah, maybe it was from the Buckner and Garcia Pac-Man Fever. Maybe they have a line in there about raiding the arcade.
Yeah,
but at the end of the book they have that like sort of mixtape art and stuff. So I'm sure that was just meant to be sort of like, I think they did that for the Guardians of the Galaxy. That was sort of a best-selling album. Was his I've not seen it, but he had a mixtape that he listens to in there. So I'm sure it was like, hey,
that's right. Yeah.
We'll put this on Spotify and people will pass it around. But who cares? We're near, we have 10 pages left in the book.
Yeah.
And this is the true moment that it's all been building for. And it really,
in my mind, it was
amazing.
It was worth it. I was delighted by this chapter. This made me laugh hard. But before we get out of this, I just have one. I'm going to nominate a sentence of his for the Ernest Hemingway competition. He's fighting Vance, and he says, "He killed me again. He was really good. Almost as good as my father, but not quite." That's very, a hard stop on each of those, obviously. Right. So that's very, Nick built a campfire. The campfire was warm. Nick enjoyed the warmth. It just sounded a lot like he should have. He should enter that.
Right. They're all mini individual terrible quips.
Right. All right. So this is it. This is the final chapter. And what a chapter it is.
It's amazing. So 10 pages are left in the book at this point in time. And we are a lot of stuff's going to be tackled.
Yeah. So just to be clear, this icebreaker is going towards the moon, going towards Europa. It's like a doomsday for them, right? And
yes, they're launching this, and it's essentially I forget what it actually does, but this is they're convinced, him and his father, that they need to shut down this weapon because it's like the ultimate act of war, and they think that if they shut this down, then the other guys are going to call off this invasion because this has all been a test.
Yeah, and this is a conspiracy theory, and everyone else is using some sort of war propaganda. That was another thing he mentioned, that the news was, as he switched channel to channel, all he saw was propaganda. Well, I mean, in fairness, they are reporting on these smoldering cities.
Yes, and all of this has happened. Yeah, it's not the Iraqi minister of information who's telling you patent untruths to your face. They are, they were happy that they fought off the aliens, but they were showing the things that looked like deep impact.
But I switched to one channel, and they were running a spoken word of Protocols of the Elders of Zion. I mean, it just made no sense. It wasn't, at that point, it's not really propaganda to say. But
they were running Johnny Cash's Ragged Old Flag poem to...
Anyway, that's where we are. He's got to stop the aggressors, which is the EDA, from inciting the destruction of man.
Right. And so I think he did stop him. He stopped him at the end of the last chapter. And it was, again, your sort of your Shakespeare Hemingway thing led up to that. But he had 3 ships. He broke down Vance's one by one and then blew up the icebreaker, seconds before it was going to detonate or whatever, just in case people aren't reading the book.
Yes.
And so the next chapter starts saying, that was all it took. In that one moment, it appeared that I had negotiated a ceasefire. The news was already coming in over all of the EDA comlink channels. All around the world, the alien drones and ships had suddenly deactivated, allowing themselves to be easily destroyed. How
you have to read it a couple times. Is he really doing this? Reports were already coming in. We're actually still in the moment. You know what I mean? It's so hard to think of, wait, they're coming in where? What? So seconds after you blew this up, the reports were coming in?
I reread The Stand somewhat recently by Stephen King, and I know you're probably not a fan, but just the contrast between the superflu hits, and he spends, it was a Kindle, so I don't know how many pages, but the anecdotes is a very interesting part of the book. He just does, a paragraph here or there, maybe a page, just talking about how this disease affected people all over the world. Someone got, accidentally locked in their walk-in fridge at work. He describes their death. He just has all these various slices of life about how this would have affected, your average Joes or people like that. So the contrast between that and, that was all it took is very funny.
Yeah, it also, it reminds me the flip side of The Walking Dead.
Walking Dead.
That's what, 12 seasons now of
yes.
of that kind of thing. Like, what if, let's treat this as a real thing and let's talk about how this impacts human beings on the ground. Cline's not into that so much. He's just going to... Right. He's pretty lasered in on just this one kid, and everything else is quite an afterthought, if even an afterthought. It doesn't even get a first thought.
Even in his beloved Independence Day, you saw like the downed ships smoking in the desert, and like Maasai warriors are like running up to him and stuff, or kids in Asia are like throwing rocks at these things. So you don't even get the briefest slice of life.
And this thing appears, the Emissary, my favorite literary character since Macbeth, or maybe Lady Macbeth. I don't know. This is so fantastic.
Yeah, it's very impressive. There's no dancing around, because it just sort of appears and he launches into it. The Emissary he says, starts right off. This thing emerges out of the cracked hull of Europa. And he says, upon closer inspection, I saw that the object was actually an icosahedron with 20 symmetrical faceted sides, a 20-sider, as Shin would have said it. So it's another D&D reference, I guess. But I was curious.
And does that explain the change in the book that we had speculated about before?
But the other one went from 12-sided to 10-sided.
Well, I just was curious if there's some reason, like why the focus on how many sides?
And how on earth is that something that this guy's zeroing in on at this point in time?
It seems like something from the Big Bang Theory, like a toss-off joke. Like, are you kidding me? That's an icosahedron, not a whatever. How dare you? Why are you focusing on the sides of the thing?
Imagine you're looking at an 8-sided one. Like, I guess that might be easier to count. But how are you sure? Have you seen a 20-sided dice? Like, they're tiny. Like, they're all to count them would be very. I don't know.
Maybe they were labeled. I don't know.
His father's dead. Yeah, exactly. It does have the 1 through 20 labeled because it is a dice. Anyway, the Emissary appears. That's the description we get. I think it's chrome, he says. But so I was just imagining. I think there was the alternate Clippies in Microsoft Office.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's like an Einstein, there was like a dog, there was a red ball. I think there was one that was sort of like this, like just sort of an amorphous energy shape. So maybe that's where this comes from. But he says that the emissary quickly explained to me that there were never any extraterrestrial beings on Europa. And I thought that the quickly explained was just you don't say that this is happening very quickly.
He rushed through it in a way that made me think he had somewhere else to be at that time.
And you'll never believe this. When I went to copy that's not in the draft. The draft just says the emissary then explained to me. So I guess at some point in time, his editor was like, you got to make this clear that like he was in a rush, like because you were in a rush, and we need this all powerful sentient.
Oh wow!
Computer screen.
So yeah, his marginalia notes were probably like quicken the pace, quicken it, and Cline went back in and said, "All right." He quickly explained.
It happened quickly. It's amazing. It is. So that's the fifth one of those that I saw, and those are just the ones I went to copy, so I could do it. So there's no description of this, other than the 20-sided thing. I'm stunned that it doesn't have the voice of someone familiar, Leonard Nimoy or something.
That is a shocking omission, because that has to be easy. Why isn't it Patrick Stewart? Which reminded me, no, not reminded, sounded exactly like.
Yeah,
Patrick
Orson
Stewart.
Welles' War of the Worlds. Yeah, that type of thing. That would make sense. But no, but it just sort of lectures to him. It says, I built the Armada, and this entire time you were fighting against yourselves, which is not really the case. Like they weren't doing the you're hitting yourself. There was an invasion of millions of drones that destroyed cities and millions of people. He calls it an imaginary enemy. You knowingly disengage from the cycle of warlike escalation with your imaginary enemy. Again, not necessarily. They didn't dose the water and make people think that there were aliens attacking them.
The guys whose legs were pinned under a cement beam, as he slowly, watched the pictures of his family dance before him, was just like, well, I'm glad that it was just we're fighting ourselves and it was an imaginary battle. I feel a lot better.
Isn't that like the ultimate Twilight Zone cliche of like, you were unable to do this. We would have granted you all the wisdom, but your own selfishness was.
Twilight Zone. It's like the most embarrassing episode of Star Trek is a masterwork, is the works of Goethe compared to this.
So, I mean, I've got a lot of things here, but your test killed millions of innocent people, I said through clenched teeth. So I assume that's like, you bitter, like you jackass, including several of my friends and my father. Then one sentence later, I was nearly sobbing now. So his teeth have unclenched, presumably, to allow him to do the sobbing.
My face contorted, I thought to myself. I watched as my face contorted.
But yeah, he says, emphasizes that it was a test. And we wanted to gauge your capacity for empathy, altruism, and ability to act and negotiate as one collective species, which is not what happened. One guy really convinced another guy who was not really on board with all aspects of the plan that they needed to go and do this. There was no negotiation as collective species.
Nobody even understands what's happening. He's the only one. So there's one 18-year-old kid.
Yeah. So yeah, he set the stage for that, but didn't even have the action leading up to it describe what they're talking about right here.
I thought, why not him in front of a giant monitor? People of Earth, everyone was glued to their, was watching their set. They switched their YouTube channel off and turned on to me on my Skype channel or whatever. And then I told them what was happening. We quickly agreed that we should.
Right. We voted like in an American Idol poll, like to do this.
Right.
But so he tells him that he's an emissary for something called the sodality, and that is a league of 8 other planets, civilizations that have banded together to help improve each other's lives.
That was the sole it's like a little Kiwanis club or a Shriners thing. Who built an intelligent robot that goes and kills millions of a civilization to test them whether or not they can be in the group and get access to the reading room. They have a couple of weight machines. They're a little old, but they're pretty usable.
Boca Raton timeshare, like
right.
But he does. He says there's many benefits to membership: sharing of knowledge, medicine, and technology. Your species' longevity and individual quality of life will increase drastically. So that's what he's promising him here on behalf of the sodality. That's all probably like 2.5 pages, folks, and because he's about to do some more negotiating with him. So if you're not reading the book, it sounds like we're probably glossing over a pretty important part. We have devoted way more time. The audiobook of this could not have taken longer than our discussion just did.
Yeah, while reading it, you do the thing where you kind of flip the page forward and go, oh, yeah, really? Okay. Yeah, this is it. All right, I guess I better focus a little more on this. I was glossing over this. This is it.
I looked it up. This whole scene probably takes about 4.25 pages. If I'm generous, 4 1/3 pages. So I went back and looked that awful list of video games and movies that was in the very first part. That was four straight pages. So the presence from another galaxy offering a thing that will alter the course of mankind is devoted slightly more than 1977 Star Wars, 1978 Atari's Kaboom.
Oh, but the emissary at one point, he says, we put the giant swastika on the moon to test you. Like we put a thing of aggression. Mm-hmm. So the emissary or the sodality, how do you pronounce that?
Yeah, I think it's sodality. I mean, it's another word like Europa that was hard to not read as European.
The sodality, this group of just 8 civilizations just hanging out, they put a giant swastika on this moon. There's no one actually lives there. And they were just testing them with an aggressive sign from them. So a false flag from these people to start a war. And
Right.
then they follow through with the war and they murder a bunch of our civilians. And he's just having a nice little chat with it, but on the other side of it, you get this and that's just, and he just gets a little angry at it and like, God, but I don't know. We are going to get these benefits.
Right. Yeah. If they had, because he's doing that because they saw the symbol of aggression. And so they went to, we're going to nuke the place. It would have made a lot more sense if they had put the peace sign on it. And so it's like, hey, this is a civilization. If they sent a nuke up there, then it would be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, this is not, hey, like you're escalating this kind of quickly. But it's it doesn't ring true to put up the most hate-filled symbol in the world and then expect people to be like, I bet they're cool.
Right. We're going to really get along with these guys. Yeah, all they needed was, even by his stupid logic, just the monolith, Wow, there's something put this here. Obviously, this is the work of an intelligent being. Now, how do we react to it?
Right.
But instead, a giant middle finger and a sticking out your tongue.
Put up the winky emoji to sort of be coy about it, or put up Mount Rushmore, but it's like there's 4 carrot tops on it, and be like, whoa, what does this mean? Like, how do we puzzle this? Like, I guess we got to get to know these guys. They're into some weird stuff.
Yeah, so I don't have much more about the emissary, but
no, this is going to surprise you. So this was a very brief sort of sequence, but they do spend. I went behind your back.
Oh
I got to admit this. I went behind your back.
Connor, how many podcasts have we done together?
I got Lex to hack into your Gmail, and I found your dark web links who have been sending you these scenes, and I was worried that you were going to sort of chicken out and not keep going back to them. So I tracked him down, and I got him to leak me a scene of this, the climactic scene of the Armada movie.
You went behind my back to my people who are making the Armada movie, and you took your own leaked scene?
It sounds weird to say it out loud like that, but that is exactly what happened. That's how I spent my free time last Saturday.
You went behind my back and did this and stole something from me.
I'm behind your back. I'm behind your back leaking scenes.
Good job, Connor. That was my bad cop thing. Okay, wow. Well, I'm excited. We have a leak scene that I have not heard. A little upset that I'm not in the loop. But leak scenes to me are gold. I love it because I think, again, we could reconstruct the movie and have a side business selling it before it actually comes out. So, let's run it.
I am the Emissary. I am an intelligent machine created by a galactic community of peaceful civilizations known as the sodality.
So the entire time, it was just you? It was all a test?
Affirmative. We needed you to prove your worthiness, and you did. Your actions, Zack Lightman, show that Earthlings are capable of transcendent selflessness. Say, how's your mom doing?
But you killed millions of people. Huh, wait, my mom?
Word around the galactic hive mind is that she's insanely hot, and according to Cliburnian 3 of the Omega province, newly single?
Well, yeah, my dad died about an hour ago. I don't think she's back on the market yet.
Yeah, well, no, right, of course.
Yeah, okay, well, so is the Omega province you just mentioned, they're in the sodality?
Omega? Oh, yeah, they're in there. I mean, sure, they're cool, but listen, when your mom was dating, she'd go out dancing with her friends, right? Would you get all dressed up?
Yeah, but she never, really had anything long-term going on.
Yeah, was she the type that would, I don't know, wear sexy underwear, just in case?
Oh, what then? What does this have to do with the solidarity?
Please, it's sodality. Show some respect. You're still a probationary member.
Sorry.
So, yeah, there's 8 other civilizations. You'd be the 9th. After the probationary period, of course, you ever go to do the laundry and your insanely hot mom's clothes are still in the dryer, and when you go to move her stuff into the hamper, you happen to get a glimpse at any sexy underwear or anything?
Mr. Emissary!
These are normal sodality joining questions. We ask them of every new planet.
Really? So you asked Cliburnian 3 of the Omega province if he had an insanely hot mom and if he ever saw her underwear when he did laundry?
Yes.
Well, did he?
That's none of your business, probationary member. You ever walk in on her in the shower?
Okay, now this is insulting.
What, yes or no? There's no judgment.
Well, then of course, yes. During the 18 years we shared a small house together, that probably happened once or twice by accident.
Sure, yeah, I get it. Accident. Hey, what's up with the long fingers? It sort of got slipped in at the end there. I don't know, it seems like a potential deal breaker.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Wait, what are you doing?
I'm counting your sides, man. 7, 8, 9.
Hey, that's very annoying. Please, stop.
10. Okay, well, I'll stop when you stop asking questions about my mom.
Oh, yeah? Well, whoa, hey, ho, ha, hoo, hey, hey. Yeah, how do you like that?
Come on, stop spinning. You made me lose count. Dick.
Look, Zack, to prove there's no hard feelings, I have 20 sides.
Oh, okay. An icosahedron. Nice.
Speaking of 20, I hear your smoke show mom still looks like she's in her 20s. Ba-boom!
Oh. You know what, man? Screw your cancer cures. I'm leaving.
Wait, Zack. What's the yoga pants situation? Does she work out in, just a sports bra? Oh, damn. Well, may as well send Cliburnian 3's mom a QCOM pic of my 17th side. That's the dong side.
Wow, that is exactly how I pictured the emissary's voice. And
exactly. Yeah. Who needs Leonard Nimoy? He's sounds cooler and he's has a bit different interests in this reconstruction. But who can blame him, really?
No, I mean, I actually think that's a more satisfying explanation than is actually in the book. I'm glad they expounded upon that and sort of expanded the universe a little bit. This line made me laugh so hard. Is the emissary in the short description of everything that was going on says, he says, it flew away or whatever. I never saw it again. And I just had, I had a line. I wished he'd added, well, it's not entirely true. Once, many years later, I was at an Applebee's in Ohio, killing time before my cousin's funeral when Who walks in with the emissaries, but the emissary? Son of a bitch pretended not to even see me, and I was right up front at the bar. But that's the second time I saw the emissary.
Right. They do the eye contact thing, but then look away and just sort of pretend like it didn't happen. Yeah. He drinks a few margs and tries to work up the nerve, but the emissary's already gone by the time he goes over there.
If his next book, I swear this to all listeners, if his next book is The Emissary, I will read it happily, and my podcast will be a complete celebration of the book, and there will be no critiques whatsoever.
But when the offer is presented to join the sodality, Zack says, "I didn't spend a whole lot of time thinking it over. I just went ahead and said yes." And again, you don't say. You didn't take a lot of time? Didn't take a lot of time on anything else?
The emissary was in a rush. Remember, he had to quickly give the explanation. I got someplace to be. There's 8 other places I can hang out. I don't need to be here.
The guys on Rybicon are really, I don't know. They drew a line down the middle of their whole planet, and they're not letting the guys from Rybicon B come over to Rybicon C. So it's, I don't know. It's...
Plus, we're all going to, we're doing a cosplay thing, and we are going to a convention tonight. Who am I going to dress as?
But then, so he says, as soon as, so that was the second wave, but as soon as the third wave shows up, because they were still on their way, I guess, since they had accepted probationary membership in the sodality, the ships landed and began to help humanity rebuild its civilization, as well as the planet's fragile environment. The alien drones also began to dispense miraculous life-giving medicine and technology, along with an endless supply of clean, abundant energy. It seemed like they gave humanity everything it had ever wanted.
I just had one question. Did they rebuild Portland? Or did the population refuse because they wanted to keep Portland weird and burnt out and filled with stinking, rotting corpses of the dead?
We're good.
Coming in
Cut
here
down the
with
line
your...
at Voodoo Donuts.
Yeah, that new building, man. It's not as good as the one that was there before. Forget it.
So yeah, just wave a hand. Environment fixed. Miraculous life-giving medicine and endless supply of clean, abundant energy. One sentence. Doubling down, it gave humanity everything it had ever wanted. I mean, it's really, we've said it before, but if you were in 3rd grade and you wrote a story that was 20 sentences long, that's how it would end. Yeah, they all lived happily ever after.
This is a Deus Ex Machina on a level which has never been seen before.
Yes, it really is.
Every question you ever had and everything that doesn't work, I am wiping it away with my hand with this one paragraph.
Yeah, I mean, do you think he was building to that the whole time, or do you think he just wrote himself into a corner and like we've joked about, was like, well, this is how it's going to be. Like, I got places to be.
Yeah, I honestly think it would just had to have been a rush, even for him, because he would have spent some time dwelling on how Europans, or the emissary, the sodality, built up a bunch of new arcades. They had better rigs than I'd ever seen before. Right. Every rig was free, and it had no lag in it whatsoever. And yeah, I mean, he of course
corn chips were abundant.
Yeah. He would have loved that. Dry cereal free, and just, there was some machine that just made it, that created it out of nothing.
The sodality finally did the thing where they released Lucky Charms. It was all marshmallows. It was all worth it.
I have a note here and my mom thought it was just as hysterical as I did when they decided to rename the gym I destroyed at my high school after me. They thought that was really funny that they're still yucking it up over.
Right. Yeah. So that's in the epilogue. I thought that they might have stolen his idea from Milo. That was his dying words. But then I was also like, what? This is the worst honor you could imagine. I was like, I would like to see a show of hands from everyone who listens. Like, who knows who their high school gym is named after, if that's even a thing?
I mean, I suppose it is. People make fun of whoever something is named after when you no longer have any idea who that person is. You just call it something else. And
right, exactly. Let's go to the gym. No one's ever referenced the full name of their high school gym. But yeah, the epilogue has some. They do a funeral. His Admiral Vance speaks at the funeral because he says he was a good man. And I guess sure, doesn't have much of an impact at this point in time. He also meets with Notcher. the guy who had been flicking the dripping spit flecks at the nerd in the very first scene.
Yeah, I did not get a sense. How long after was this? Does he do any time? Because he said he changed a lot, and
I think this is exactly a year because there's like a memorial to his dad, and he has a 3-month-old baby brother. When they had boned like teenagers, his mom got pregnant. So yeah, I think it's exactly a year.
What's the baby's name? I forgot. I didn't write it down.
He says this is pretty incredible. My 3-month-old baby brother, little Xavier Ulysses Lightman Jr., the kid whose name ensured he would never have to pay for a drink as long as he lived. I just thought something that I, a 19-year-old, find myself thinking about infants very often. Oh, that kid, lucky him! Like walking into VFWs and having people buy his Bud Lights for the rest of his life.
Yeah, he's got a basket of pull tabs. He's a huge pot belly. I didn't buy a single one of these.
This is pretty awesome. We now had a cure. Oh, his mom had to find a new job for the best reason possible. We now had a cure for all forms of cancer, which had eradicated the disease in a matter of weeks. And most other diseases, too. So, one, he yada, yada, yada's curing cancer, which, like I said, that could be a book. In itself, the aliens showing up and the implications that would have, and then two, the sodality left the mumps rampant, like most other diseases.
Yep,
like they're gonna let feline leukemia run around still. Like what the hell, guys?
Toenail fungus. Can I get a little love over here?
Listen, we're skeeved out by that. We don't need to get down there. You guys are on your own.
Oh, but I think he brings up the clean energy one more time. Clean and abundant energy is clearly something in his head that he thinks a lot about.
I guess, you start to ask questions. If people aren't going to be dying of cancer or diseases, you're probably going to, I guess you did reduce the population by substantial amounts, but you're going to have to figure out how they're all going to live happily if the overpopulation might be suddenly a concern. But I guess clean and abundant energy, that takes care of it.
Now during every reading of this book, I genuinely, because it takes a while, and I sometimes will have a coffee or something while I'm doing it. This was a genuine near spit take on this one. when Stoser is there, he says, "I wonder if he'd heard about Casey, the boy he'd bullied mercilessly throughout most of high school. He died during the first wave, along with his whole family, and millions of others." I wonder if he heard about. Did you hear about the? Remember when the millions and millions of people died in that huge invasion? Do you remember that? Right. You'd be surprised to learn that Casey was among them.
Oh man! Remember when our parents died?
Yes.
But yeah, so Notcher has all three of his limbs have been replaced. So I'm sure that any veteran with an actual Purple Heart is impressed by that. It's a good way to steal that valor by having this dipshit show up and all of a sudden be a half cyborg. And then he ends it. If you are sitting down, folks, you please sit down. He ends the book by sort of quoting Yoda. I read this and I was like, well, I'm not surprised that he's doing this. But in a book filled with direct paraphrasing and quoting of garbage, he does a weird. He sort of interpolates Yoda's advice, because I didn't recognize this quote. I went on Yoda quote sites and stuff, but he says I was going to follow Yoda's timeless advice to keep my mind on where I was and what I was doing, and to do everything I could to protect what was now most important to me. And I went on Twitter and someone told me that the quote is, "All his life he has looked away to the future, the horizon. Never his mind on where he was, what he was doing." So he's afraid to quote that. I am not sure what happened.
Paraquoting him or interpreting him.
Yeah, I guess or it's a wink just to be like the true fans will get this one. But it was a very strange. I was like, is this a weird interpretation of the famous Yoda quotes? But I don't know. It was it sort of. In a dashed off last few chapters, that one struck me as a very strange way to end it on.
Yeah, because we can't give him the credit of, you thought my final thing would be some shitty quote from some garbage. Well, guess what? I'm twisting everything around on you. I'm not giving him credit for that. Here was my final note on it was He says, I wasn't interested in helping either the asshole aliens who devised such a horrible test and murdered my father, or the human powers that be who had lied to all of humanity for decades and nearly brought us to extinction. And I just thought, this is where the book should start, where you are talking about what happens after this bizarre, world-altering thing. Now, where do we go from here? What, there was a secret organization that, colluded with these aliens, but that's the only interesting thing is now what happens.
Right.
But that is, of course, closed out with a fake Yoda quote instead. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, so he says he doesn't want to help him, and then the next page he decides to join as an ambassador or whatever. But yeah, when he asks for details about the stuff, the emissary just says like, "Well, you're not ready for that type of thing." So that obviously he didn't want to have to think about any of those details, which, like you said, would be the interesting part. Yeah, I mean, he just screeched it off the side of the road, rammed it into a tree, and started hitchhiking away before the engine could burst into flames, I guess, on this final thing. Dusted his hands. That was it.
The reader is going to his own car and getting the fire extinguisher and trying to put it out before he knows what's happening. Dude,
yeah.
Where'd the author go?
Don't worry about that. It's insured. Oh, well, so that's how it ends, but I've got some sentences.
A sentence begins with a capital letter. A capital letter is a letter that's big. A capital letter is not a small letter. A capital letter is big, big, big. A sentence ends with a
period. It's going to be sad to see that go.
Hey, I'm going to make it my ringtone just so I can hear it, more frequently. The one time a month I get a spam caller.
It is good.
Yeah, boring sentence. I've got this was so fast paced that there wasn't a lot of time to get boring. I mean, obviously there was a lot of node and internet talk, but my nominee was something Cruz said, which is when he meets him back in his bedroom and falls out of his chair. He says, and since we're two of the highest ranking drone drivers in the greater Beaverton area, we got first dibs on local drone access. So that's something that he's saying with enthusiasm in his voice, but highest ranking drone drivers, greater Beaverton area, first dibs on local drone access is something that.
Oh, and again, the action is supposed to be racing forward with
exactly
breakneck speed.
The sirens outside.
Was that your? I didn't quite hear. Was that boring or dumb?
Boring.
Okay,
I've got a better dumb.
I'll offer my boring sentence of the week then. It can't, as you said, it can't quite live up to we had much more meat in the earlier chapters, but this one did strike me as we're trying to go drive this action forward. I watched as the device dialed 5 different numbers all at once and then connected all of them simultaneously. Then my QCOM switched into conference mode and my display screen was divided into 5 separate windows, each containing 5 live video of a different person, each of whom appeared to be in a separate location. So while we're getting to the breakneck action, an explanation of how conference calls work.
Yeah.
Very detailed.
And
they were each in a different location. So that was a good... Because when you're calling 5 different numbers, you expect that at least 2 of the parties will be standing right next to each other.
Right. DeGrasse Tyson had showed up to help Hawking open a jar of peanut butter or something, so they were in the same location. But right. Well, my dumb sentence of the week, I appreciated this one. They're talking about the final defense line or whatever. Debbie was back home in Duluth, controlling her drone from her own living room, while her 3 sons continued to stand guard outside their home by controlling EDA drones with an Xbox, a laptop, and a touchscreen tablet, respectively. And so, one, there's no respectively because she hasn't been like...
No, it's not.
Huey, Dewey, and Louie were controlling him with the Xbox, laptop, and touchscreen tablet, respectively. And so you can picture that Huey is using the Xbox and Louie has the touchscreen. But it was just like, I imagine them being like, Debbie, please, we do not need these details at the moment about how your 3 sons are specifically the interfaces they're using. Please, Debbie, we need to move on. No, Louie is upgrading the tablet's firmware now. We do not need to know that.
It'll just be a moment.
Yes.
Then I'll tell you what Huey is doing.
Yes. Wait, is it an Xbox One or an Xbox 360? Huey, Is it an Xbox? It's a PlayStation. Okay, well, I don't know. I don't know the difference between those things, but you get the idea. I appreciate it as the war begins to rage.
That is delightful. Mine is going to be, I know it's going to be controversial. I stand by it, though. Because he says at some point during the action, he says, I checked the time. It was still running out. Now, I'm taking it on its face that this is just dumb Cline, that, time, of course, does nothing but run out. And so he checked the time. I think people will say, oh, come on, can't you even give him credit for doing,
joke?
Suddenly he's doing a, hard-boiled detective joke. Like, nah, I can't give him that credit because there's been nothing like it before. And it just sits starkly in the middle of things. So, I think that he just, in his rush, that's what he typed. Come on, there's no craft or anything anywhere else in the book. So
right, that's similar to the I had only known the bridled kind of joy earlier. When those do rear their head, it's like a nails on the chalkboard.
But at this point, his feet aren't up on his desk, in his shabby office in a corner, and his hat is tipped down, and he's halfway through a bottle of whiskey, and a dame walks in, and then I checked my watch, time was still running out. Nothing like that is happening. So anyway, I'm not giving him credit, and I'm calling that the dumb sentence of the week.
I accept it. Yeah, I accept it.
That's it for everything.
We made it through. I wrote down a gigantic 32-point font "ugh" at the last sentence. And it's time to move on. What are you going to read next?
You mean as a real thing?
Yeah.
Oh, what am I in the middle of? I always have 4 books going at the same time. So I'm constantly reading the works of G.K. Chesterton, so I have that to read. There's an assignment coming up for that, so I will dig into that. How about
I'm going to read You God's autobiography from the Wu-Tang Clan.
I don't know this person.
He's like the 8th best member of the Wu-Tang Clan, and so he's the one that opted to pen a tell-all. And
is the Wu-Tang Clan, are they a sodality?
Yes, they're the same number of members in the sodality as the Wu-Tang Clan.
Yeah.
Wow. Huh? I'll ask him about that on Twitter. You God, hey, have you read Armada? No? It's proving to be more. I've read like 10 pages. It's proving to be more entertaining already based on his anecdotes.
And you God, is that like a reference to? Is he a god? Is he a 20-sided spherical god?
I think so. He is an emissary of truth.
Yeah.
He explained that. I already forgot. I might not finish this book,
but it's entertaining.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
All right. Well,
he created art that I enjoy. So
yeah. Well, I think that's it. Then we will, I assume, see everyone who is listening in Minneapolis on April 11th.
Yeah, get your tickets now. They're going quick. There's like less than a third of them available. Don't expect to show up and talk your way in on the day of.
And Sisyphus Brewing has, they have good beer. I like their beer. They have, I will say, they have shuffleboard tables in their bar area, but Connor and I are shuffleboard near professionals. I'd say high-ranking pro-ams.
Yeah, well, if we play, we're playing horse collar. We're not playing the clack your opponents off.
Yeah,
we play a much more advanced 3-dimensional version. So if you come, that's what we're doing. I don't want to hear any talk otherwise about it.
Yeah, that's garbage. Don't even bring that stuff. But the tables themselves, though long, are ill-kept. Yeah, and the wax on it is 400 years old, and you have to shove as hard as you can to get the pucks down there. So, but still, I think Connor and I can take anyone on who.
I'll tell you what people love. They love when you show up at the shuffleboard table, try to introduce a game they've never heard of, complain when they don't want to play it, and then blame your poor performance on the maintenance of the shuffleboard table. Which most people, that's all they've ever played on, because that's what bars do. They haven't had one in their office that's like been impeccably wiped down at the end of every day.
Yes, that's just again behind the scenes at our office in San Diego. We have a shuffleboard table, pro quality, that we would replace the wax possibly every 2 hours if things were, to changing conditions and all of that. And everyone in our office became, I would say, a world-class shuffleboard player.
It was an impressive stretch of time.
So anyway, that's a little bonus that you can do if you come on to Sisyphus on April 11th.
April 11th.
Otherwise,
Sweet.
We will
See you there.
see you soon. Maybe we'll do another book in the future. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Who knows? This has been,
Send us some suggestions, but we'll talk to you then.
it's been 372 pages. We'll never get back.